Hey guys, what's up? Unrested back again, and today I am hopefully recording with a lot better sound. I apologize for the last video in which I've been told by quite a few people the sound was very bad. Hopefully this makes up for it as I'm recording right next to my microphone as I draw. And I'm finishing up a drawing that I started on my first channel, Inksmith. You can check out the beginning of it there and I guess see my process if you really want to. But let's get into what you're really here for, and that is the spooky stories, the Osoroshi Friday here in Japan. Let's get into our first one. It is Yutaka Ozaki. This is a 100% true story. You can look it up online. You can look up that name online. But I will say, trigger warning if you're not into hearing about people's very sad and depressing demise. Yutaka Ozaki was a very famous singer here in the early 1980s and was pretty much a little bit different from a lot of the idol era that got started at the beginning for the music scene and studios here in Japan. If you don't know, Japan's mostly ruled by studio bands. There isn't a lot of garage-based bands or people who start a solo career kind of singing their own songs that they create themselves. Almost every band is highly corporate and processed by people who write all their songs, make all their dances, teach them all their instruments. If you look at any of these bands out there, I think you can probably figure that out, as everything sounds very corporately made. He was kind of the black sheep of this and went out and created his own stuff. He was a wild card in the music scene, like learning piano by himself, kind of having his own style on piano, writing all his own songs on there, singing with a wild voice that just broke a lot of barriers as far as what was considered a normal voice back then of, very, very simplistic power chords that people were using within guitars and stuff like that. He was really, I guess, a rebel when it came to the music scene back in the 1980s, and he became very, very popular because of that. In fact, he had a love song that was so popular, it was adopted by multiple singers, even here in Japan. Utada was one of them who sang her version both in English and Japanese. Even Debbie Gibson in America, if you remember her from the 1980s, then you're as old as me, she adopted it into a English version of the song. So definitely a guy who had a lot of talent, a talent that was seen by other people. Now, the sad thing is I guess he had that 27, 28-year-old death wish that a lot of these singers have. And it's not for the same reason you've heard about before with some of the people in the rap scene where their studio almost tries to knock them off to make money off their postpartum depression, postmortem, and sell their stuff postmortem, where they're not making money on their label anymore and they have them knocked off, which sometimes happens in the rap scene and even in normal music scene that is not rap. And it happened with him in a different way, where he seemingly became more and more depressed as his label was trying to take more and more control of his music. So I can kind of understand his depression in that situation. I think that would be very hard to fight the corporate stronghold trying to take down your creativity. And because of that, he started to get into drugs, as all these singers tend to do, it seems like. And he had a heart attack at 28, was sent to the hospital, got surgery for it there, and apparently instantly after he was released, only a few hours later was found dead in an alley from, I think they call it pulmonary edema, which I believe that means blood fills up into your lungs. And this is a common occurrence from an OD on cocaine. You've snorted enough and your heart pumps too hard and you start having blood go into places that you're not supposed to have blood in, like your lungs. You literally suffocate in your own body. It can't be a very nice way to go. He was found seriously bruised up though, so there was a lot of conspiracy around how did he die. Some people said of course he just OD'd and that's, pulmonary edema, that's what it's about. But apparently he was found so bruised that some people say they believe he was beaten up or killed by the label that tried to get him to become more corporate. Now, I'll be honest with you, I ran this past my own family. My my family here in Japan, who are a lot of them in the medical field, and they said, no, look, like he definitely OD'd. This is the exact symptoms of ODing on a drug that would put blood into your lungs. But according to the media, there was bruises found all over his body, especially on his chest and around his ribs, which that can also cause pulmonary edema. But usually it has to be something like as extreme as like being in a car crash. Although I have seen before where there's people beat so bad that it says they have the same injuries as though they were in a car crash. So it's really left up in the air. There's a lot of conspiracy theories swarming around his death. To this day, he's remembered as a great singer, and just recently, his son has started to record some of his songs again, and apparently his son has the same amazing voice and talent that his dad did. So good on him for holding on to that torch and keeping that legacy up. I guess that's a scary story that has a bit of a happy ending, which is kind of nice for once. Now we're gonna get into some darker stuff. Okay, we got two urban legends going on here. Okay, two urban legends. So recently you may have noticed the trend within the AI world where there's all these new AI generated images, even sometimes music videos, animals, people. You can find just about anything. And one of the most common ones that's become very popular recently in Japan is this person does not exist. Now, there is an urban legend in Japan, and I guess put as much belief as you want into this, that if you save the pictures that you see on this person does not exist, that person will stalk you and eventually pull you onto that website to have your picture taken by the AI to join the legion of, I guess, people who don't exist. It's a bit of a weird one. So it covers a story told about a guy who's a bit of like an otaku, who his big thing was investigating internet conspiracy theories here in Japan. And the one that he stumbled on was the one about this person does not exist. He's looking into it, and he's finding people who are saying, like, if you look close enough at the faces on this person does not exist, you'll notice strange and unusual distortions to the faces on there. And this is true. Go do it yourself sometime. Type in "this person does not exist" and have it randomly draw you up a bunch of different faces. You'll start to notice some weird things, like half chunks of other people's faces that were in the video, because what the AI is doing is pulling sources of facial images from different parts of the internet and compiling them into a brand new creation. So for example, you may see like an Asian woman and her face looks totally okay, but if you look at her one ear, it's like twisted into a knot of flesh, okay? Maybe an old man and he's smiling, and when you look at his teeth, you realize they're just all one bar of bone, okay? Maybe someone has braces and you look into their mouth, and like as you look closer into their mouth, you'll start to see the braces swirl around their teeth in a way that's just not possible in real life. And this is kind of, I guess, the gaps in the AI creating these AI-driven people, okay? And apparently, if you save any of these pictures, especially the most distorted ones, that person will show up in real life and stalk you. And the person who did this says that they saved one, and that it was one where the guy's mouth hadn't fully formed in the picture. It turned into this sort of black hole vortex where he's got his mouth open in a bit of surprise, but instead of forming a upper and lower lip, it becomes this sort of spiral of darkness into his neck. And that it creeped him out so much that he was just like, okay, I got to take a break from this. I'm going to, get a snack, get my head out of the clouds here with this conspiracy theory research stuff, and like get a bite to eat. He calls Uber Eats because that's something we have here in Japan too, although we don't have Uber Drive because taxi drivers protested until that got taken away. And when he orders it, the pizza man who shows up to his house is that guy with the twisted mouth, and he won't open the door. And he's asking people on Nichan what to do. And, Nichan's got its own X board, and he was asking and then saying, I've got this guy at the door. It's the guy I saw online. I saved his picture. I'm looking through the peephole right now. Almost every door in Japan within every apartment that everybody lives in has either a camera or a peephole. And I can see that guy on the other end of it with his mouth twisted up. He's wearing the normal uniform my Uber driver would wear, my Uber Eats person would wear. He's got the big backpack on. But his face is twisted into a vortex hole that goes into his neck. and he's like banging at the door, and they're just like, don't open it. And that was the last comment they received from him, that this person he had saved from the do not search these people, or these people do not exist, came to his door. Okay, good urban legend. Kind of ends though a bit mystifying, like a lot of these urban legends do, like Kitsuragi Station, where the person just ends up there and doesn't. They're like, oh, a person's come here to help me. He only has one leg and he's limping on crutches. You can look that up if you want. It just ends with the person wandering off into the mist of Kitsuragi Station. Next up is our last one for the day, and it's White Death Butterfly. Now, the name White Death Butterfly just sounds like a word salad of horror, and it is a website that apparently saved horrific things that had happened in Japan. So you're talking about saving pictures of things like the Akihabara stabbing, the murderous girlfriend, which, if you don't know, is a situation where this hostess and host were living together, and the host had cheated on her, and she almost stabbed him to death. He actually did live, but when the police came to find her, she was like covered in blood and smoking a cigarette. Kind of a famous picture, the beautiful murderess or something, I think it translates to, with the newspaper. This is a totally true story. There's a newspaper article that showed her on the front cover, and it said like the murderous beauty or something like that, and she's covered in blood and smoking a cigarette. Some of the other ones are like the bathtub murderer, where like he buried the woman in a bathtub because he filled up the bathtub with sand, and when she died he buried her in there so that the body wouldn't start stinking and he'd get caught. The barrel murder, which is like someone set into concrete and then put into a barrel. This is actually what happened to a gaijin that came to Japan. She was an English teacher, and the guy invited her to her house, and he killed her there and put her inside of a barrel and poured concrete into it because he had seen it in a manga or something like that. Last but not least, one of the pictures that's the most famous on there that people are having trouble finding a source to, which means this is probably just an urban legend. I've never been able to find an article on this story, but apparently there was a man who was a bit challenged, mentally challenged, low IQ, gray area, we'll say that, okay? And his job was simply to deliver vending machines to different areas of Japan. If you don't know, there's like, for every 13 people, there's one vending machine in Japan. So there is like 1 billion vending machines out here. I'm sure you've heard about it in the past. I'm not going to get too into that, but his boss was known for having a special gold-plated vending machine in his office that everyone who walked in and had to talk to the boss would always go, wow, it's really cool. It's like a gold vending machine. Cool. It's because he was, a distributor of those. I guess this was kind of like a trophy to himself for having done so well. And over time, the company got smaller and smaller. Vending machines not as popular as they once were, due to the facts like there is Uber Eats and stuff like that. But he was down to just one last distribution employee, and that was the guy who was kind of in the gray area. And he said, look, man, like, you're the only guy I've had who's stuck with me all this time. I have something special I want to tell you. I'm going to hand down this company to you. In Japan, if you don't know it, people sometimes adopt adults, and that's if they don't have a kid of their own. They'll adopt like one of their favorite people at a job so they can inherit their business, so the government can't take the business away after they die. This deals with taxes, property value, all different types of stuff. It's not, a really true family adoption in which you become loved for and cared for by that person as though they were your dad. It's more so for legal matters, but people do this where they adopt someone if they don't have an heir to their corporate empire. And that's what this guy said. He said, look, you're the one who's you've never been late for work. You worked hard every day. And this guy did. He had like a great, spectacular working condition that he did where he never was late for anything, always delivered everything, never got into a fight with the customer, just did his job and got it done. And he said, the one who's stuck with me all this time, I'm going to give the company to you. You've worked hard all your life. You've, not gotten anywhere close to the kind of money that I've made as running this company. So now is your chance to have a way to retire. As you work as the boss. And the guy was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, he was almost in tears because he was so happy about this. And just as that was about to happen, where the guy was about to retire, he started dating one of the hostesses that he was seeing at a hostess bar or a snack bar, which is, it's not exactly sex work, but it's a place where men can pay to go to talk to women. They pay exorbitant prices for drinks and snacks there. I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing in Japan. I don't want to get into the whole social aspect and political aspect of that. No matter what your thoughts are, this is what the guy used to do. And he decided he was going to marry one of the women. She asked him if they would get married, and he thought, wow, I never thought I could get married to one of these beautiful women at the snack bar. And so he brings her in, he shows her what his corporation is, that he runs a vending machine company, and slowly, little by little, she becomes this gold digger of his company and gets him talking about possibly giving the company to her instead. And unbeknownst to the other worker who has been just a distributor of the vending machines, he doesn't find out till way later when the guy calls him into the office and says, hey, my girlfriend has a complaint she wants to make about you. Apparently you sexually harassed her here at the job. And he hadn't done this at all. This was totally made up by the girlfriend. I guess she was plotting to take the company away. And he's like, so I can't hand the company over to someone who would do something so disgusting. I'll let you stay working here and I won't file anything with the police, but really I could have you arrested. Just be lucky you get to keep working here as a distributor. So apparently this was like the snapping point for this guy who was in the gray area. And he could not take it anymore. He was so angry that the next day, when the boss of the company came in, he found his girlfriend at the time, his fiance, who he was going to get married to, and she had been butchered. And the way she had been butchered was incredibly disturbing, and trigger warning here if you don't like blood and gore. But apparently her body had been cut up into chunks and wrapped in the plastic used to wrap the convenience store or conveni or vending food machine food. And they were placed into chunks inside of his gold vending machine. And that's what the guy who was in kind of the gray area, the guy who was kind of mentally challenged, had done to her as a final FU to his boss and to her for filing a fake sexual harassment complaint and for him not being able to get the company. Apparently he was arrested. He's still in jail to this day. And that guy's company went bankrupt a little after because of all the controversy that came out in the newspaper about that. They have a picture on their website of all this. I don't suggest going to look all this stuff up unless you want to see some real hardcore gore. But again, the name of the site is White Death Butterfly that has this story on it. And I thought, wow, this is an incredibly dark story. I've got to add this to my list of horror stories to tell you for the day. I hope those 3 stories were a decent bit for the new Osoroshi Saturday, or Friday as it is now. And I hope you enjoyed these horror stories. If you have anything else you'd like me to look into for horror stories for the future of anything Japan-based or Asia-based horror, let me know in the comments down below. Until next time, I've been Unrested, and I'll talk to you again real soon.